A major endorsement is at the center for the race for the White House this week. On that and the latest in the Trump election interference case, we turn to the analysis of Brooks and Capehart. That is New York Times columnist David Brooks and Jonathan Capehart, associate editor for The Washington Post. It's great to see you both here. We've missed having you here together. It's a nice reunion. Let's start with the state of the race, shall we? Let's take a look at our latest PBS News NPR Marist poll that shows in the national head-to-head there. Harris is up by 2 points within the margin of error, though, of course. And this week, there was another rollout of Republicans backing her, most notably Liz Cheney, but also a number of other women who had previously worked in the Trump White House, including Cassidy Hutchinson and Sarah Matthews. Jonathan, in these crucial final weeks, for her focus now seems to be on pulling in conservatives, independents, former Nikki Haley voters. There's some consternation among progressive Democratic circles that she's not doing enough to shore up her base. What do you make of that?
You're just trying to trigger me, aren't you? Aren't you, Amna? Look, and I say this to my progressive friends, with love. Calm down. The vice president has been talking to them, presenting, some things that they like for months now, for weeks now. In a race that's going to be decided on the margins, where it's going to come down to a few thousand votes in a few states, she is doing what she needs to do. There are people who don't want to vote for Donald Trump, who feel like they don't have anywhere else to go. And when you have a Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, Alberto Gonzales, the former attorney general, Alyssa Farah, all these, Cassidy Hutchinson, hundreds of Republicans saying Donald Trump should not be president again. The vice president is out there saying to those people, there is a place for you. And when Liz Cheney, she is a conservative, hard C conservative. So that signals to those squishy, can't vote for Trump and I'm not keen on her, signals to them, like they don't agree on much of anything, but they do agree on their reverence for the Constitution and the rule of law. And that if that is good enough for Liz Cheney to say she's going to vote for Kamala Harris, then that should be good enough for them. That's the signal that's being sent. And I think the vice president is right to go for those votes, to ask for those votes.
What do you think, David? Is this convincing for those squishy voters?
If progressives were happy, she'd be 20 points down. Her main problem is people think she's too liberal. And so anything she can do to show something to the center, win over Republicans, that makes her seem more mainstream and more acceptable to the people who are actually going to decide the election. I have to say this is the most mind-boggling campaign I've covered.
Why is that?
Because it started out tied and it got closer. And so I don't know who's winning. Usually you have a sense of who has some momentum and who doesn't. Yeah. Now I could tell a bunch of stories. I could tell a story where Trump wins. Among independents, Trump is more popular, or at least has higher approvals than Kamala Harris does. And if you've got a 60% negative approval among independents, that's not a great sign if you're trying to win over independents. So that's a story I could tell where Trump wins. Then there's the hidden Trump voter. The polls are not picking up. Yeah. She's not doing as well among Hispanic voters. So all those, you could tell that story. Trump is actually looking good. On the other hand, his voters are low commitment voters. Yeah. And so they could easily not show up. On the other and furthermore, his ground game, from everything I'm hearing, is pretty pathetic. And so in a swing state, if one side, and I think the Democrats have a really good ground game in the swing states, getting people out to vote, and he has some random consultants who his campaign has hired, or the PAC has hired, that just doesn't work. People come out to vote if a friend or neighbor tells them to come out to vote. And so that could give the Democrats, 3/4 of a point, and in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that could make a big difference. So I could tell plausible stories on both sides.
And I would add another potential hidden vote, and that is the hidden pro-Harris vote. People who don't want to tell pollsters, don't want to tell their neighbors that, what, I'm actually going to vote for her, and they'll do it in the ballot box. That is, personally, that is where I'm putting a lot of my hope, that there is a hidden Harris vote in that regard.
In the world of things that could make a difference at this point in the race, we've now seen the combination of Liz Cheney both stumping for Harris and the unsealing of this court filing that was brought by special counsel Jack Smith put January 6th back front and center in the headlines, right? And actually, Cheney had this to say when she was stumping in Harris in Wisconsin with Harris yesterday.
Donald Trump was willing to sacrifice our capital to allow law enforcement officers to be beaten and brutalized in his name and to violate the law and the Constitution in order to seize power for himself.
So, David, when you look at that, is this going to be a persuasive argument for people who haven't yet made up their minds?
I don't think so. All honor to Liz Cheney, who's a conviction politician, a woman of great integrity. But, you know, I just think the economy is what they should be talking about 100% of the time.
Even though people tell us preserving democracy is important
It is
to them
for some
this election.
people, Democrats. But remember, that a lot of Republicans think democracy is under assault. I would just say, like, I've been on the road. I've been missing you, but I've been on the road for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And the first thing I notice is people don't want to talk about the election. They're just like, no, let's not go there.
Really?
But when they do, it's more about their own personal lives, like, how am I doing? And so I do think getting down to, and then they say this every 4 years, I want to see more meat from her. I want to see more substance of policy. And maybe they don't really believe that, but they do want to have a sense that there's something deliverable here that they can latch on to.
Jonathan, what do you make of that?
Which part?
In terms of January 6th, now still being a central part of this campaign. We're talking about it again, especially after
Right.
that court filing. And there were some new details in there about especially Donald Trump's actions leading up to and on the day itself.
Okay, so let's put the new Jack Smith filing into context. It came out either a day or two after the vice presidential debate, where Governor Walz asked Senator Vance flat out, did President Biden win the 2020 election? And he would not answer the question, which then led to lots of conversation about the 2020 election, January 6th. The Jack Smith filing comes out, and then we get to read a lot of things that we already knew, but then we got to read things that we didn't know, and that is because of direct testimony from someone like former Vice President Mike Pence, who went under subpoena and talked to the special counsel. And so I think by having this back out as part of the national conversation, political discussion, I think it might have the same impact that the January 6th hearings had, which was in the immediate aftermath, might not look like it had any kind of impact, but you look and saw what happened in the 2022 midterm elections, where the red wave was blunted, and people said that I think it was preserving democracy or threats to democracy was a big issue, number one or number two issue for what motivated them to go to the polls. And so I think what we've learned from the Jack Smith filing might end up having that kind of impact again.
Well, let's pull all this together now, because you have that Jack Smith filing. You've got, as you mentioned, Senator Vance not saying that Trump lost the last election, refusing to do that. And then you had President Biden in the briefing room today when he was asked about the upcoming election and asked whether it would be fair and whether it would be peaceful. Said he was confident it would be fair, but he wasn't sure it would be peaceful. And David, that is quite a statement coming at this point.
Yeah, and he's right, of course. None of us know if it's going to be peaceful. I would say I can draw some comfort from the Jack Smith report in that, one, we learned that there really was a much bigger effort. Every time we learn more about this case, we learn it's a bigger effort than we thought. But two, and Jack Smith said this, it was more a personal effort on Trump's part than official effort on the part of the presidency as president. And he's trying to he doesn't want there to be immunity here. But, you know, he's out there calling Steve Bannon. He's calling some other mope. He's just like, it's just a random collection of maybe we should do something. And so it's a genuine conspiracy to steal an election, don't get me wrong. But the ineffectiveness of the conspiracy is one of the arguments that my colleague Ross Douthat has always made. He's a proto-authoritarian, but he's not effective enough to be an actual authoritarian. And I got a little of that vibe from the Jack Smith report.
Jonathan?
Like, hey, kids, let's put on a show. The only reason why it wasn't effective is because it didn't work. But the fact that we keep seeing that this conspiracy was much bigger than we thought before tells me that that effort was a whole lot more sophisticated than I think we're willing or comfortable to give credit to.
David, do you think that in some of the arguments we're hearing from Senator Vance and Trump, they're laying groundwork to challenge the election results if they lose?
Oh, for sure. They're filing a zillion lawsuits in state after state to try to undermine that. So they're laying the predicate for that kind of challenge, for sure.
All right. Well, we will be talking about this much more, I'm sure. David Brooks, Jonathan Capehart, always good to see you here and end our week with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And online, you can see our own Dima Zain and Lisa Desjardins' countdown to Election Day. Each day, they'll highlight a new fact about this year's election. You can see that on our TikTok channel.